We don't believe the government should be taking the money in the first place. How do you feel about people like us?
This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by nhliberty.org.
Demographics and that would change the demographics.
Well, I've already covered the protests and the background behind this quaalude quorum in Manchester, where pro-government activists and officials teamed up to try and scare people about an upcoming spending cap referendum. Now, technically, it's not a quorum, it's a forum. But organizers used a format that was pretty top-down. They had pro-government guests, and you were only supposed to ask questions of these guests by writing them down and having them handed to organizers who would take them to the moderator, who would ask them to the speakers.
But why do you factor in, probably Brian, why do you factor in per capita property taxes when a large portion of Manchester residents are not paying property taxes?
It's an imperfect measure, but you have to pay for the cost of providing services in the community, and the way you determine which is higher or lower is you divide it up among the number of people that are treated, because that's the best indicator of the overall size of what's in the community.
I was standing here with Lisa from Manchester, but actually I should upgrade your title. What's your last name again?
Gravel.
Lisa Gravel, running for alderman here in Manchester.
In Ward 7
Okay,
against
cool.
Bill Shea. Yes.
And you, what was your impression of this forum?
Well, I felt it was clearly one-sided. I mean, it was very obvious to me that these people were in opposition of the spending cap. I didn't see any healthy debate or any alternative view. I found it very interesting that the majority of the aldermen showed up to this meeting when there was a meeting earlier this month that was an informational meeting, and none of them showed up to that. So I found it very interesting that they all showed up at a meeting that was clearly biased towards opposition of the spending cap, and that they didn't show up at the other one.
In the absence of someone just jumping up and speaking out, this was not going to be a town hall meeting type thing. One of the speakers was the measured and soft-spoken Brian Gottlieb of Polycon Research. Pro-authority activists call him a fiscal conservative. The other speaker who was there when I entered was Manchester attorney Brad Cook. Gottlieb had the least bad argument I've heard so far against a spending cap. He said that in Franklin, New Hampshire, where a spending cap's been in effect since 1989, the private sector employment has gone down 25%. However, he did also admit that Franklin's debt situation is unusually good. Their per capita taxes are substantially lower than Manchester's, apparently far lower than the state average.
And I'm standing here with Pat from Manchester, who you told me earlier you're basically still against the cap after what you've heard. Is that correct?
Yes.
What are your concerns with it?
Well, my concerns are what was said tonight with respect to the decline in Manchester. The airport is one issue that's an economic engine of New Hampshire, and their ability or non-ability to bond or to expand as they deem necessary in the market is prohibitive for Manchester's growth. The teaching aspect's the same. The school system aspect is the same. Manchester has been marketing itself as a destination city, and I feel that this kind of puts a kibosh on that marketing.
There, I guess, has been some talk, I don't know if anything will come of it, but some talk of a potential property tax revolt here. Some folks are still upset about the way this has, not been voted on, they think in a timely manner. What do you think should happen to somebody? They say, I'm so upset with the way Manchester's spending my money, the way they're handling things, that I'm not going to pay my property taxes. What should happen to such a person?
What should happen to such a person? Well, I have to pay my property tax. I believe everybody has to pay their property tax. If you're not happy with the property taxes, there are other alternatives. You either sell your home or go to another community or what have you. Personally, I know in 2006 and 2007, 2006 the property tax raised 0.95, and in 2007 it was a negative 1.6. So I think there are ways that we could look at the property. I mean, I completely agree that the last 2 years the taxes have been high. You know, the 5%, close to 5% last year, and this year it's you know, close to 3%. You know, these are economic dire straits right now, and you know, elected officials need to listen to what the people are saying, and in every effort we need to you know, we need to see where we can find efficiencies.
All right, thanks for your time, Pat.
Okay.
Take care.
Yes. Dangerous.
A check of the most recent Union Leader article on the spending cap issue shows that public opinion is swinging toward the big spenders, at least on unionleader.com. It looked to be about 50-50, an even split between pro-spending cap people and anti-spending cap people. But that's a significant shift from late 2008, where almost all comments, probably 9-1, were in favor of the spending cap. So if you're a Manchester resident, you want the spending cap to happen, you will need to do stuff.
I'm sitting here with former state rep Greg Saltz, who, you know, because you're witnessing the sort of quaalude meeting that's going on in there, the very calm, boring type thing, but it's angering you. Why?
Well, because the, you know, liars figure and figures lie, and what they're doing to justify putting a spending cap or to oppose a spending cap in Manchester is using these fancy graphs that say, look, Manchester is near the bottom when it comes to per capita taxes. But when you factor in per capita taxes, they're factoring in the tens of thousands of people in Manchester who aren't paying any property taxes. Of course, that's going to lower the overall property tax medium for the city. What if they were being honest? They would tell you what we are paying for property taxes, for the property taxpayers, what they are paying. But instead, they're factoring in all the people that aren't paying taxes, and it's giving us an artificially low tax burden as a homeowner, which I don't think that's fair.
What do you think the purpose of this forum is?
Apparently to deceive people into thinking that it's going to harm city services by putting a spending cap in place.
They're saying basically that they need to be able to raise spending faster than the rate of inflation.
That's what they're saying, and it's an unsustainable path that they're going down.
All right, well, I'll try to talk to some of them about that as soon as I get
Sure, good luck.
All right, thanks.
Love your show.
Oh, appreciate it. Mr. Cook, got a couple questions for you. Dave Ridley with Ridley Report, and I'm wondering, you had mentioned, well, there's actually been some talk of property tax revolt over this issue. People feel that strongly enough about the tax cap and the way that it's, you know, some of it's procedural. But what do you think should happen to somebody if they say, you know, we're so frustrated with the city and shutting down the tax cap that we're not going to pay our property taxes? What do you think should happen to someone that does that?
It's not what I think. It's what the law says. When they don't pay their taxes, after a certain number of years, a lien goes on. After a certain number of years after that, the city takes the property for taxes.
Do you think that's appropriate for them to take it?
This is not. We don't opt in to be citizens of the United States.
Do you think that's appropriate? Shouldn't there be an opt-out option?
Yeah, there's an opt-out option. You move to some other place. But,
all right.
As long as you're here, you got to follow the law.
I appreciate what you said about tax cap proponents not being evil, but has it occurred to you that some of us have a moral issue here, that we want the cap because we don't believe the government should be taking the money in the first place? How do you feel about people like us?
I would say that's uncivilized.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Mr. Cook.
My pleasure.
The Manchester government is currently big enough to restrict treehouse construction in people's yards. It's big enough to arrest people for walking through parks, for owning plants, and for standing with signs on street corners while the president is in town. If you think that's as big as it needs to get, you may want to become active in this issue. This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance at nhliberty.org. You cannot do this at the State House in Concord without hitting one of these guys. They're everywhere fighting for your freedom. The New Hampshire Liberty Alliance at nhliberty.org. You should join them so you can join the fight for liberty. And I should say, don't join them, join us, because I am a member.